Hey, this is Sandy.
And Randy.
And we're here on AT Corner.
Being an athletic trainer comes with ups and downs, and we're here to showcase them all.
Join us as we share our world in sports medicine.
Welcome back to another episode of AT Corner. For this week's episode, we have an amazing interview on a topic that hopefully no one ever has to deal with, but we should be prepared for.
I'm surprised actually by how many stories we have gotten so far, and I assume we're going to get more after this episode airs, about people who have had to respond in a crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with this episode too, also, how do we help other people that have went through maybe a similar crisis?
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, community is something that we as AT Corner strive to create. But I think even beyond that in our profession and, Brian actually reached out to us, and I think this is something that is difficult for us on the podcast sometimes, is like, we want to cover all of these topics. But sometimes we aren't the right person to do so. And I couldn't think of a more perfect person to describe this with such tact, to address this topic with just professionalism and realism. And I'm just really thankful that we were able to provide a platform for this topic. Yeah. So do you want to introduce Brian?
Yes. Like we said, he also has the experience of going through this. So Brian Coley received his undergrad at the University of Central Oklahoma. He received his master's from the United States Sports Academy. He was an intern at the University of Miami. Go Canes, in 1990. So those were probably some solid squads, just saying. Currently, he's the program coordinator of the Allied Health degree at Rogers State University. Brian has also served as the Oklahoma Athletic Trainers Association president from 2006 to 2008, and he was inducted into the Oklahoma Athletic Trainers Association Hall of Fame in 2018, and most recently, the Mid-America Athletic Trainers Association Hall of Fame this year in 2025.
Definitely someone to look up to. I'm sure that he is, I'm sure it's difficult for him, as so many humble people are, to hear all of his accolades in one spot. And we could probably go on, but without further ado, let's get into it. Randy, do you want to start us off with the cryo breakers?
Yes, absolutely. So our first cryo breaker is, what athletic training tool, and this could be a tape, a brace, rehab, etc., basically anything that describes you as a clinician?
Well, you're funny that you asked that, because that's one of those questions I've been going back and forth about on my drive, and I finally settled on a brace, because we use those braces to be protective, and I am fiercely loyal to my family and my friends and colleagues, and do whatever I need to do to protect them and to take care of them. And I do the same thing with my student athletes. When I was working with them and my students that I have in class now, I go probably above and beyond probably what they need, just to make sure that they're enjoying their collegiate experiences, but that they know that there is somebody out there that does care for them.
So I love that. And awesome. Unlike tape, braces don't falter.
Very true. Sometimes there's days when you might feel like you're getting ready to falter, but then you just pick it up and readjust it and keep going. So
yeah, honestly, exactly.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into, let's kick it off with a story. So here on AT Corner, we love to share evidence and experience and kind of tie the two together. So if you could share a story about something that we're going to be talking about, being an athletic trainer during a mass critical incident, something along those lines, if you could get us started.
Sure. As we were talking, I've got two realistically, and both of them really pushed me to the limits, because when they both happened, we didn't really have mental health awareness. The first one was April 19th of 1995. I was just 3 years into my career, and I worked at a hospital as an outpatient rehab clinic, and then we had a couple of athletic trainers. And being from Oklahoma, we're used to gas and oil accidents. And on this particular day, I was working with a patient, and I was on one end of the gym, and somebody came in and said, hey, there's been an explosion in Oklahoma City. Well, being that I was raised around Oklahoma City and partially on a farm, explosions happen. Gas pipes burst. And so I never really paid much attention to that. It wasn't until a little bit later, probably even 15 minutes later, I moved down to another section of the gym where we had a TV that was supposed to be on the news all day long. And I was working with another patient, and some others were there. And all of a sudden, we had this physical therapy tech that worked with us by the name of Margaret. All of a sudden, Margaret gasped, and she said, "Oh my!" And I just turned and I looked, and my first look at the Alfred P. Murrah building on TV, I just said, "That's not a gas line. That was a bomb." And everybody turned around and looked at me like, "How do you know?" And I want to keep this part in mind. I'm 29 years old at the time. In our clinic, a lot of what the hospital did was they would hire the new PTs that were coming out of school, give them a 2-year contract, work on paying their school off. And so everybody else was 23, 24 years old. So unfortunately, I'm one of the oldest ones already in the clinic. And they said, "Well, how do you know?" And I just said, "It looks like the building from 1983 when an individual drove a truck bomb into our barracks in Beirut, and he killed over 200 of our Marines. The buildings looked exactly alike." And that's how I knew. And so obviously they started the procedure of who was this? What was it? Was it a bomb? Was there another one? And then my partner, my other athletic trainer, and myself, we got called to the office because they knew that there were going to be mass casualties. Now, Oklahoma City from Tulsa is about 90 miles. So we they call us in and say, "Hey, you guys, they're putting a team together, so you might better be ready because we're going to send you guys because you have, critical skills, not necessarily, the incidents like we were seeing and talking about tonight, but we have emergency skills." And I was like, "Wow, this is interesting." And so of course, I had to go in and call my wife and tell her. And what she was at home. She was expecting our first child. She was 4 months pregnant. And so she had seen it. And so I had to tell her, "Hey, there's a possibility that I'm going to have to go to Oklahoma City." It worked out that I didn't. But that afternoon, because I was outreach, I had to go over to my high school. And right off the bat, kids started kind of having questions. Coaches started having questions. Who would do this? Why would they do this? The thing about Oklahoma City is there were children involved. And that was the biggest question, is who would do this and not only kill 168 people, but within 168 of those were 19 children.
Wow.
And again, at that point, I'm 3 years into my career. We haven't had any training on how to handle critical incident. And so I basically just kind of started doing it from off the cuff, just trying to give answers, because realistically, I was trying to come up with answers, and I didn't have an answer. So I was trying to counsel or provide guidance to them when I really didn't even have it. It ended up being the fact that we worked ourselves through it. The biggest part for me is, like I said, being from Oklahoma City, my wife and I knew that there was probably going to be a good chance that we knew somebody or knew somebody that knew somebody. And we did. My wife had a couple from her church they were in the Social Security office, and they didn't make it. And then, if you've ever seen any of the specials, the young lady that lost her 2 little boys, I knew her when she was little. And so we did know somebody. And so that ties it in to home a whole lot more. And like I said, we didn't have the understanding of mass casualty. In fact, I actually found out at Christmas when I was sitting at our lunch that one of my coworkers, who was just retiring as an educator, as a nurse, she was actually the lead trauma nurse in Oklahoma City that day. And so we actually got to sit down, and she was just telling me some more stuff that was going on. And you can't imagine that in your mind, what was going on. And I don't know that anybody can prepare for something like that, where it's a nice clear morning, and then minutes later you've got hundreds of people being brought to your hospitals or being treated around the area. And so it was one of those things where we had to, well, just do the very best we could with what little training we had, and just try to talk people through it. So that was that one. And like I said, I don't know if it's unlucky or what, but I've had two of those in my career, and the other one, everybody's going to pretty have a good idea, was on September the 11th of 2001. And I guess I'm gullible. Maybe I am kind of gullible. But I was sitting in my office, but this time I had left the hospital and I was at a high school, and we were there full time. And I was just in my office doing rehab work or paperwork, and my volleyball coach's office was next to me, and girls basketball was down the hallway. Our girls basketball coach comes down and she goes, "Hey, did y'all hear that a plane has flown into the World Trade Center?" And I just kind of looked at her with this dumbfounded look on my face, like, how can somebody fly a plane into the Trade Center? They're huge. And of course, at that time, I think we were all thinking private plane, Cessna, or anything like that. And I just kind of turned around and was doing my work. Well, about 6 or 7 minutes, I decided to go up to the main building and get all three of our mail for all three of us. And as I made my turn into the main building, I saw my principal, by the name of Alan Whalen, standing there. And he just gives me that hand gesture with "come here." And so I started walking toward him. And as I get to him, he looks at me, he goes, "We're under attack." And I look at him like, "What do you mean we're under attack?" And he goes, "Those were jets flown into the World Trade Center." And so we go into his office, he's got his TV on, and that's when I see the first tower. And I'm like, I'm speechless, looks like everybody else was. And we had some other ladies from the office standing there, and it wasn't but a few minutes later we saw the next plane go into the other tower. And I'm going to apologize for saying this, because this is not typically how I talk or speak, but my first words were, "Oh shit, we are under attack." And we were just baffled. And again, we're sitting here going, what is going on? But then we hear Pentagon had been hit, and then a little later, the one that crashed in Pennsylvania. And that's when you have to step back and you go, how are we going to handle this? And we had school mass scheduled for that day. And so we didn't have TVs in our classroom. Most of the rooms did not have TVs. And so Alan was finishing up the mass and made the announcement. And so obviously they went from being quiet to very subdued, and dismissed students to go to class. And I was teaching a care and prevention class at that time. So, and I happened to be over in the science building where we had a TV. So we turned it on, and obviously did not feel like teaching. Started having a lot of questions. And at this point, nobody had answers. We were starting to hear things. And by that time, and when I turned it on, one of my students said, "Mr. Coley, where's the tower?" And I looked up, and they were gone. And by that time, they had collapsed. And that's when it really hit that, oh my goodness, we're in it now. And this is unparalleled. This is something that we've never seen before. And hopefully it's something that we never do see again. I was fortunate that I had a good relationship with my head coach. And he came to my room after he saw it, and he said, "We need to go to the coach's office. We need to meet." And so as soon as I dismissed our kids to lunch, I went running down to the office. And, our coaching staff at that time, they were about as crazy as anything. Great coaches, but we had more fun, and practical joke. There wasn't a week go by that wasn't a practical joke put on somebody. But that day, it was so subdued. Nobody was saying anything. We were in complete shock. And I would imagine most everybody in the country was. And so we just started making a plan. And the Tuesdays were usually our heavy work day. And the principal, Alan, had said, let's have everybody go home by 3:00. Let's get everybody out of here. And So Greg and myself and one of the other coaches, we just said, let's just go out in helmets and shorts. We got a game Friday. We'll just do the best we can. And so we go out, we put them in the stretch program. We're probably 15 minutes in, and I look and I can tell the kids are not there. And their faces and their expressions. I mean, I'm kneeled down on the side of the field, and I can tell they're not there. And I just walk up to Greg and I said, let's go in. I said, they're not here. And he agreed. So we went down, and all of us, before we dismissed him, the coaches just talked to him about, I guess, about life and what was happening. And again, we had some information. So that happened at 9 o'clock Eastern time. This was 3 o'clock Central time. So 6 hours. So we went all the way around, and it came to me and Greg. I still talk to Greg occasionally. And he said, I'll always remember what you said that day. And what I said that morning was, we woke up this morning with a blue sky, laughing, giggling in my house, running around, chasing each other, getting ready to go to school because it was my son's 6th birthday. And I said, we're going home sad. And I said, my son's birthday will forever be tied to this tragedy. And it has
forever changed.
And forever changed, yeah. And it has been. And he has told me several times about, he would tell people, well, my birthday's today, and they would say, oh man, it must be really horrible to have a birthday on September 11th. And, so I had to do some stuff with my son to say, you couldn't control that. And, but I left school and went to go pick him up. And my wife, I always dropped him off in the mornings, and my wife picked him up because I was going to work in the evenings. And I pulled up to the school, and guys, I'm telling you, there was nothing, I don't want to say haunting, but more, I guess in a way, a little peaceful, because there was nothing but a whole playground full of little kids running around. And they had no idea what was going on. But in my mind, I'm thinking, there's some kids today that mom and dads are gone. And I went through the gate, and all of a sudden I heard, Daddy, 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 Daddy. And I looked up, and here come my blue-eyed, dark-haired little guy coming running at me. And he jumps up in my arms. Again, not aware of anything. And his words, I'm going to talk like a 6-year-old. He said, Daddy, why you doing here? Why you picking me up? And I said, I just had something. I can come pick you up. And then I started squeezing him really tight. And he said, Daddy, you're squishing me. And I said, I know, baby. And so we went home and began to sheltering the best we could. And obviously in shock. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, oh boy, this is going to be an interesting week. How, again, not having a whole lot of training in critical incident. How are we going to take each day? And that's kind of how I began to approach it. And that's when Greg and I met again the next morning. And I said, hour by hour, minute by minute, day by day, let's don't, let's don't push them. Let's just do what we need to. By that time, by Wednesday afternoon, they had canceled the game on Friday. So we just decided, let's just do an easy week. We just went out in shorts and helmets every day and just walked through stuff. And even on that day, on September 11th, it was really eerie for us because where our school was located was in the flight line of Tulsa International Airport. So we would see planes coming in and out all the time. Well, by that time, all planes had been grounded. And it was eerie. The only planes we could hear were the F-16s flying overhead because we have a National Army or an Air Force Reserve base here in Tulsa, and they were up flying. That was the only thing we could hear, and there wasn't a whole lot of traffic. It was very eerie. So, like I said, we just took them through easy workouts. I began to talk to them about, hey, my door's open. Come talk to me. If I can't answer this, we'll figure it out together. And then if we need to bring, we were going to have counselors available at school. I said, then we can get you to one of the counselors. And so those are my two things. And like I said, to have two in a career like that, where you're having to really kind of think off the cuff because, again, I've already said it. We didn't have that kind of training then, and it has definitely changed my thinking of how I approach things now. So that's kind of my
Yeah.
story.
Wow.
How have these events kind of shaped umbrella term of the outlook of athletic trainers as first responders for these mass critical events? I know that you've kind of seen like the beginnings of it and how we didn't have that training and now we're kind of talking more about it. How have you seen us kind of shift so that when something like this does happen, we're looked to be seen as someone who would be doing some first response?
Well, I think, unfortunately, we live in a time when mass incidents are a common thing now, if you think about it. And because of that, I think we've started paying a little bit closer attention. If you go and you take a look, go back to, for instance, the Boston Marathon and the bombing that was there. I was talking to a colleague this morning, and she had a mentor that was there. And she was just telling me that the athletic trainers, they jumped in to help with their emergency knowledge, but that was about it because they were seeing blast wounds, they were seeing amputees, they were seeing things that we were never taught in school.
Mm-hmm.
So I think because of the fact that we started seeing a lot of that stuff, we're starting to incorporate that into our education, and so that we're prepared. We're always going to be ready to do a cervical injury or exertional heat stroke, something like that. But now, because we are looked at as first responders, we're having to take on another responsibility of how do we handle this situation. I hate to bring up, the violence that's in schools, but it's there. I have a class that I teach at school, and it's called Bloodborne Pathogens and Hazardous Communications. And tomorrow's that day. My last speaker of the day is active shooter training, and I go back and forth. Why do I need that in there? And every time it's almost been verbatim. I've had that in there. A mass shooting has happened someplace. And because my students are going to be athletic trainers or physical therapists or OTs working in hospitals, that one year we did that in March, and in May we had one here in Tulsa at a hospital, and five people were shot, and it was only five. I'd say only 5 people. It was 5 people. So it's become almost a part of our lives now, and so I think we as athletic trainers are evolving to the point of we got to be ready for anything. I think we'd all say we would just rather be able to take care of the blown out knee or the fractured femur or whatever. But now, as we say in the sports world, we got to have our head on a swivel. We got to be ready for anything at any time.
I teach a prevention and care class, and a part of that is talking about, okay, how do you handle hemorrhaging? And unfortunately, that's become a topic as we start talking about the different methods. And, one of them is going to be a tourniquet. And a lot of students kind of look at like, when am I ever going to use that as an athletic trainer? I have to remind them, like, it's still a solid majority of athletic trainers are still in a traditional setting. Well, if you haven't noticed, there's a lot more gun violence around school settings. And sometimes you're going to be the only healthcare provider on that campus. Exactly. So you're going to be looked to hopefully be able to provide some help.
That's right. And, there's a really good program, and a lot of people, maybe some have heard of it. It's called Stop the Bleed. And that's part of my class tomorrow. We'll go over that. And just like you were just saying, we'll talk about tourniquets and direct pressure and packing. I wish we didn't have to do that, but we're having to. And we take that in, and I've been to a couple of continuing education classes for athletic training where we've actually taught that and had that program in. So
I think the Stop the Bleed also has a free component that anyone can take online. I'm pretty sure.
Yes, you can actually do it online. My university was nice enough to buy me the big kit and everything. And so I use that. We're kind of thinking about maybe taking it to the public a little bit, toying with that. But right now they gave it to me, and so I teach that use that equipment with my kids and my students. So, anyway.
So you also brought this up about the after effects of kind of a mass critical event. What have you noticed from from the time of your story to now? How has the evolution on mental health changed over those years?
I hope we are educating not only ourselves but our colleagues that it's okay to talk.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to go and talk. You're not weak for talking. I'm late 50s, and in the old days they would have said, "Well, just suck it up and get over it, and just go on about your life." Well, that's old school, and we can't do that anymore. And so that's where a program like we have, like AT Cares, comes in, and we're available to be able to talk and encourage them to talk if they want to talk. Some people, it takes them a little bit of time because they need that time to process things before they're ready to talk. So I think that's where it's come. We unfortunately had enough critical incidents that we've recognized it. Now we know what mental health is, and we know that everybody's going to react differently. And so my thinking is just, hey, if you need to talk. You're not weak. Okay. Do not internalize this, because if you do, it can definitely eat you up, health wise, mentally, emotionally, anything. So I think that's kind of where we're at now. We've actually, because of what we've seen, we've now started making that bridge of being able to talk and share. So
for sure. So what you brought up ATs Care, what training does ATs Care provide to help support an athletic trainer that has kind of had to go through some kind of critical event?
Well, it's what I learned from it is they teach us, number one, how to talk to the person that we're going to be dealing with, and realistically, how to listen. It's a peer one-on-one, and they work with us, and it's typically an all-day class. Sometimes it's a 2-day class of just how do you zone in, and you're going to learn from the key things that they're saying, because some people may not. I'm going to use the word salad. They may just be jumbling. So you've got to be able to pick up on what there is, and so you might say, well, what I'm hearing you say is, and then what's bothering them. And so they really work with us on not only listening, but then how do we give that response back? We never want to make anybody feel guilty. We don't want them to feel sad. We're working with them to help them relieve whatever it is that they're dealing with. And so AT Cares is a great thing. I am very happy that we have it. I can't remember how many we have in the state here in Oklahoma. I think there's 6 of us now that have gone through the training. And so we've got 3 of us on the east side, and I think 3 on the west side. So we can cover that area of the whole state. So
wow, nice. That's awesome.
Do you guys think that it's utilized as much as it should be utilized, the program?
I want to say yes, but I haven't looked at the latest statistics that we have. They usually put some out, and I can't remember when the last ones come out, but the number was there, and so people do know about it. And I think, again, that's just part of our work as athletic trainers, to continually educate people, just like we're supposed to do. We were educated to educate them that it's there, and if they need anything, they can call us. What I typically do, how it really usually works is, if there's been an incident, then maybe it's reported to the NATA office, and then they reach out to the district rep that's over in that area, over the AT Cares, and then they reach out to somebody in the state that might be there. And so, for example, if it was me, then typically what I've done, and I've had to do it a couple of times, is I'll just start out with a text, because it's just, hey, this is Brian. I'm an athletic trainer, and like I said, I'm old. I'm going to be 59 in a few weeks, and so some people may be younger and they don't know who Brian is. And so I introduce myself and say, hey, I'm an athletic trainer. I'm part of the AT Cares program. Is it okay if I give you a call? I don't ever like to cold call somebody and everything. So can I give you a call? And if they respond yes, then I immediately turn around and we'll call them. If they don't, then I'll just let them know at the district. But I may try back again, later in the afternoon or anything, because, like I said, people need time to process. So, and from that point in, then we just start talking, and that's the best thing. I think that's the best thing we can do. So,
as far as these events go, how can athletic trainers get prepared for these events? Like, what kinds of training do you recommend? And you said that now schools are kind of implementing it more often, but can you go a little bit more specific into what kind of training athletic trainers
I don't know
need for these?
Yeah, I don't know how many of our master's programs actually cover anything like that, but I would encourage athletic trainers that if someone is doing a critical incident drill in your area, the fire department, the ambulance service, hospital, volunteer to get into it, because it's one of those things we can, just like anything else, we can see it, we can read it, but until we actually jump in it and kind of practice it, that gives us that more confidence. And so that's what I've done. I bring up our school. Our nurses, our nursing students who are seniors, we have a mass casualty event with them in the fall and in the spring. And I usually bring my advanced students and my advanced care and prevention into it. And so that allows them to see it, even though it's not real, but it's total chaos. And that's what our faculty does. We try to make it as chaotic as possible. Like this last year, we did one with the railroad here of a train hit a school bus. And so, it's just getting involved. And I know that may sound very elementary, but that's what we have to do. We have a course here. Oklahoma State puts one on every year. And one of the things that they'll do is a mass casualty situation. Like I think the scenario last time was, which is funny because I work on the rodeo circuit. It was a rodeo and a bull got out and started running through the crowd. Well,
oh gosh.
Those who don't know about that actually happened a year and a half ago up in Wyoming. A bull actually jumped the fence and got out into the crowd. And so you had to figure out, okay, who's DOA, who can we treat, who can we move, the whole tag system. And so that's the thing, is being able to get your hands, I hate to say it, get your hands dirty, but that's what you've got to do. It does take practice. And I think just finding that type of situation and volunteering to be a part of those things, if at all possible, whether it be the provider or the victim or the patient from either side, so that you can see what both sides are. That would be my recommendation.
For sure. That's awesome.
Another thing you mentioned early on in your first story was how, or in your second story actually, was how you kind of went out to practice and you could just kind of notice that the athletes just weren't present after that major event. So how do you start that conversation with coaches? I know they were your friends, but in general, your coworkers, your coaches, how do you start that conversation with them about the athletes just not being present?
Well, first of all, I hope my coaches, that we've built up a trust between each other. and they know that hopefully I've done my job to know that I'm there, not only for the student athletes, but I'm there for them too. And that through that trust, they understand that if I'm bringing them information, that it's not just off the cuff. It's meant to be treated uh, properly. And so that's how I did it. Greg and I had already been together. Let's see, when did he get there? Next, 10 years, 8 years. So we had known each other very well, and he knew, I knew how, which is scary. I knew how he thought, which is quite frightening. And he knew how I thought, and so I could tell that the kids weren't there, and I think he did too. But I think it's one of those situations where we didn't want to panic and just start pulling kids off. We wanted to wait and make sure that we gave them a little time. And so I think building up the trust uh, with anything, but especially with your coaches, and then, like you said, yeah, a lot of my coaches are friends. I'm still friends with all of my coaches, which I don't think there's anything wrong with being a friend to your coach. Yes, we are healthcare professionals, but you could be a friend to your coach, and
Absolutely.
it doesn't mean you have to, go out with them every night or go hang out at their house. But it's one of those situations where, you know, you build a friendship in trust, and so um, that I've been very fortunate in my career that all the coaches that I have dealt with are still to this day are still friends that I still communicate with, even though I'm not on the high school or the secondary school level now. They know that I've moved on somewhere else, and we still call and laugh and text, and and so I think that's the first part, is build that trust up and let them know that what I'm bringing you is critical information. I'm not going to just do this just because I think we'd have to. I'm bringing you this because it's critical, and we need to do what's best for everybody that's involved in the situation.
Well, it's hard. It's hard too, because you can also see how that sport is often very utilized as an outlet for a lot of these athletes. An escape, exactly. So when they're not being present, and it's like, well, how are you going to find another outlet for them? But is this the thing that they need right now?
Right.
And like you said, what's going to work for everyone?
Right. There was, as I was sitting here talking, there was one young man, I can still see it to this day. And part of it is I worked with his mom at the hospital, and he was playing for us, and I could see in his face. And so I called his mom and said, "Hey, just giving you a heads up, um, you know, he's not doing very well." And none of us were, but you could just see it in his face that it was just really, really weighing him down greatly. So, and I think too, uh, knowing your athletes is a big thing. Those of us that have been in the secondary school, we're with our students all the time, and we get to know their mannerisms. We get to know what they're thinking and saying and how they act. And if you see that that's not them, then that can, to me, that can kind of be a cue of, okay, what's going on here. And so, and I used to lean, honestly, I used to lean on my student assistants, because I said, you're my extra eyes and ears, because you're in class with them, and so you see something that, because athletes, they want to play, they don't want to be held out. And so I would always tell my student assistants, you're my extra eyes and ears. If you see something's going on in class with someone, you need to let somebody know, or let me know or something. So
from that like kind of student athlete perspective, and especially in like your example of them being minors, how do you provide a safe space for them after a major event like that?
That is difficult, because my policy is always that, my door is open. You can come visit with me, you can talk to me. But again, in a minor situation, that's kind of, to me, that's a whole different realm of how you have to handle things. Are they old enough? Are they mature enough to handle what you're getting ready to talk to them about? So in those kind of situations, I would think you try to have a safe space. But I think probably notifying the parents somehow, some way, and and having a parent involved or letting them know somehow. Um, and I don't have a lot of minors that I've ever really have dealt with, but I think is thinking about this, I think I'd like to have a parent with me or another adult. Maybe a parent can't be there, but another adult that is there also. And then also treated the same way. If I'm here, my door is open. If you need to talk, if I can't figure this out, or if I can't help you, I will do everything in my power to get you to the help that you need.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but yeah, being a minor in these type of situations would be, I think, would be very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we handle them? So,
For sure.
Going back to this idea of, I mean, we very often are providing a safe space for our athletes, but also in being a mentor, in being a friend, in being a coworker, we're going to inevitably also have to create a safe space for our colleagues. How do you support a fellow AT who's had to manage or respond to a critical incident?
well, I think kind of like we've already been talking is just reach out to them. Hey, I'm here. I'm kind of one of those ones. On my personal self is because I'm an athletic trainer. My wife kind of gets onto me. Sometimes I take too long to analyze things. I'll analyze things until I'm ready to share it. Sometimes I wait too long, and then by the time I'm ready to share it, I'm about ready to explode. And so I think with a colleague, it's the same thing. Is hey, you know, I'm here to talk. We've known each other for X amount of years, professionally, friendly, or whatever. Um, we're here, and then we can use our AT Cares training with them too. And we've had to do that in some situations with maybe an AT in the same facility, and so uh, it does become a challenge because not that you don't care about your student athletes, but if it's a colleague and a close friend, you probably have a deeper relationship with them, and you might have to treat them a little differently, and it's just the fact of be quiet and let them talk. And that's one thing I've learned is sometimes just Brian, be quiet and just let them talk, because maybe that's just all they need is they just need to just let it out. Um, I had a student like that a couple of months ago, or about a year ago, came to my office. She was conflicted on some stuff about not only her education but her athletic career, and I could tell that that she was struggling, and so I just sat behind my desk and I said, "Talk." And we went for 30 minutes, and I will tell you to this day, I have no earthly idea what else she said. But when she walked out, she was like, "Thanks, Professor," and that's all she needed. She just needed
That's
to
awesome.
let it all out, because she probably couldn't go to a parent because she was away from home. Probably couldn't go to the coach, but she knew she could come to me, and so, and and that's again just it, we've got to, we've got to be willing to talk, and I think that's where we have gotten better. Where we're not afraid to talk now.
For sure.
We're starting to see a lot of athletic trainers that are saying, "You know what? I need help. I need help." So so they're willing to talk. And again, with our newer grads, we got to continue to reach out to them. I'm big on educating our new ATs about mental health and about AT cares and about all the stuff that's going to go. Will they ever see a critical incident? Maybe not, but there's always that chance that they could. But it doesn't have to be a critical incident. It could be a cervical injury where that student is now paralyzed. That's a pretty traumatic situation, or a cardiac arrest. I mean, all of those things well, it's not a lot of people. That is kind of a critical incident, and that can really affect that individual. Um, like I always tell my kids, sometimes I'm afraid that I tell too many stories, but I guess when you've been in this for 34 years, you've seen it. And that did happen. I was still at the hospital. Tuesday night, we had a basketball game at one of the other schools we took care of. A young man, 15, 16 years old, went up for a rebound, hit the floor, was gone. And the AT, that was my partner, raced out there to try to do it. And this was before we had AEDs. So it tells you how long ago that was. And tried to do that. And what made it even more difficult is the crowd was still there. Nobody was trying to move the crowd. So the crowd was sitting there watching while she was trying to do this. She lasted about 6 months. And she came to me. She said, I can't do this. And again, that's long before AT cares. And so we talked about it, and she's finally, she said, Brian, I can't. She goes, I keep reliving it over and over and over, And so she got out of I got out of the profession, and I actually bumped into her about 4 months ago. And she was better, but she was no longer. He said, I can't go back to being an athletic trainer. So those are some of those things. Just encouraging. Don't be scared to talk.
You brought up a good point of like if it's something that like, hey, I can't help you with, well, I'm sure I'm going to be able to get you to someone who can. And I think ATs do a really good job of that. If it's something I can't do, I'm definitely going to sure as hell find someone that can do that for you. So for when it comes to taking care of a colleague, how can we refer someone to ATs Care?
This is a great action item.
Yeah, well, I think the first step is we notify the office down at NATA that the individual, and I should have looked that up. I apologize for who that is. That's kind of how they want us to do it, because that way they can track it and make sure that it gets to the right person. It's not that they don't want us just up and calling the district individual that's over the AT Cares region. But they want to, NATA wants to be able to see it, be able to get it to the right people, and start that chain of that. So that way we do have a chain of communication. So as far as referring somebody, or we'd probably start with the NATA aspect of it, and then go from there.
Awesome.
Is that your answer you're looking for?
I think that was perfect. Yeah.
Hopefully no one has to use it, but it's a great service for everyone who does.
It really is. And I would encourage anybody that's listening to just look at your district meetings and see if they're having one. Sometimes at national, they'll have a day or two that'll be dedicated to AT Cares. And at least even if you're not going to be a part of the team in that state, at least you've got the training. That's what we've got to continue to work on, is continue to better ourselves so that we can help those. And guess what? We may need someone to talk to, and and it's awfully hard to try to help ourselves. So there's going to be times maybe when we're trying to help somebody that we need to turn around and get some help. And again, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think I like to hope that the old days of just shake it off, you're going to be okay, are behind us. I have my doubts sometimes that it still kind of rears its head. But I hope that we are more educated now to know that we're not weak if we're talking.
Absolutely.
So,
you made a point earlier that the space that we provide for someone is underrated. Like sometimes that's just what they need to get it out of their head running, get it off their chest.
Just talk to another person.
Yeah. Again, my students, I teach at Rogers State in Claremore, Oklahoma. My students know me pretty well. and I'm pretty open with them. And they know that they can come to me, whether they want to come to me. And I even tell them, we started something at our school. We have a sensory room, which is just down from my office. And if they just need a place to go and just get away from everything, I tell them you can either go in our lab, because it's usually quiet, because we're only in there in the spring semester. You can go in there and lay on one of the treatment tables. If you just need a place just to get away, where nobody knows where you're at, except maybe me, in case we need to know where you're at. You know, go there. You know, go to the sensory room, and we got some comfortable chairs in there, and it's dimly lit, and just breathe. I think that's another thing we've been talking about. Breathe, take a deep breath. And just close your eyes and just do your best to relax as you're trying to deal with whatever you're trying to deal with. So,
well, thank you, Brian. This has really been awesome.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's something that I do think about, and kind of go to the very first question about what am I, a tape or brace? And I do. I think I'm a brace. I take care of my kids, and a lot of it too. I'll share this one more before we end. When I went to my first district meeting about 2 years after I was certified in District 5, and an athletic trainer by that time by the name of George Sullivan was at the University of Nebraska, Hall of Famer. He's in all the Hall of Fames. And he just stood up and made the statement. He said, it's the responsibility of us older athletic trainers to take care of our younger ones. Because if we don't, there's not going to be any athletic trainers. And that really hit home for me. And that really, even at that point in time, kind of defined how I started taking care of everybody that I was associated with, whether it be a student assistant, whether it be an athlete, whether it be a coach, whether it be whoever. I try to let them know that it's going to be okay. I'm here. If I can't get you the answer or the help, we will figure out how to get you the help. And so that's one of the things that I fall back on, is to give them the help that they need. And again, we got to make sure those of us that are trying to help ourselves too, because we may be carrying a little bit of the load of whatever the incident was, and now we're taking on somebody else's too. So we got to be able to know when we've had enough or whatever, then we need to be able to make sure that we can unload it however we need to.
For sure.
So,
well, you do a great job taking care of the youngers.
Well, I hope so. My mentor, I like to say that I've got 3 mentors, and all of them, I kid all of them. I say, well, because you're older than me and everything. So they've taken good care of me all those years, and educated me, and I just try to pass it down. And I encourage our younger ones, don't be afraid to come talk to us old guys, because we do want to talk to you, and we will. I told one night, I said, I learned as much from athletic trainers, the older athletic trainers, just sitting around a table, listening to them swap stories, as I did anything else. And, there may be some laughter and all that kind of stuff, but you sit there and you listen to the wisdom that's coming from those individuals, and you're just like, that makes sense. And you can kind of see why their careers have been what they are. And so, again, that's just, I have a huge heart for our young professionals. And in our program, like I said, I have pre-ATs, and so I've got some that are already in the profession. I had my picture at NATA this summer, my first student that's now certified. And man, what a feeling, that I've kind of passed the torch to the next group that's coming on.
That's so cool.
It's a great feeling too.
It is, very much so.
So what I liked from our conversation with Brian was it really reminds you that when we deal with people, when we deal with other human beings, like there's more to life than athletics. And being able to treat the person as a person and understand like they are also going through a crisis, like you are going through the same crisis, and some of the examples that were given. Like, I think that really touches on the human element of what we do.
So actually just bringing it back to one of our latest episodes with Dr. Bender about how when she was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, I think this is really similar going into that because when you have someone who is being like, even like an ACL, right? Mm-hmm. Like you don't tear your ACL and then the very same day, right, get the surgery and then very same day start PT, right? Yeah. Like there's a process, and it's like in between, it's the transitions in between these things, like trying to figure out medications and like seeing what works and what doesn't. Mm-hmm. It takes some time to kick in, and there's some time in between, and we as athletic trainers are so lucky that we get to see so much mm-hmm. of that, but there's also so much that we don't see when these athletes and patients go home. And this is the same thing, like in a crisis. I think one of the most important topics that I feel like even we hear topics about this, we hear at conferences, we hear people talk about it, but I feel like no one ever talks about like the in between, like the day to day. How do you be around these athletes who have gone through this event? How are you around the coaches? They come into your athletic training room, you know, that the mood is different. Like how does that day to day look? And I think that Brian did a really good job of kind of addressing that and bringing it to light.
Yeah, especially on something that's like a lot of times sport and athletics is the escape, but also too sometimes it's just not as important as what's going on in the moment, and sometimes you need time before you get back into doing the sport part.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys liked this episode, we also have other interview episodes. Actually, this season we have a ton. Which is super exciting. We have jumped right back into getting so many people on board, and we have so many more.
I was gonna say we still have
in the docket. So
so
we're super excited about like continuing that. We don't just do interviews here on AT Corner. We also have CEUs, which is perfect just in time for reporting season coming up this February. So we have CEUs through our podcast, through some of the episodes that Randy runs, educational topics that he reads, research articles, and kind of synthesizes the research, and then we talk about it conversationally. And those are good for CEUs through our partner Clinically Pressed and Athletic Training Chat. We also have story episodes where we bring stories from real life athletic trainers and from all over the world, and we bring them into one topic and just kind of share our experience, kind of bridge that gap between education and experience. And there's always something for you. So we have over 200 something episodes now. We're working on putting together a directory. So hopefully if there's a topic that you want to hear, we might have already covered it. And if it's old, bring it up again. We'd love to touch upon it again. So
yeah, for sure.
I think that's all I have.
Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you for helping us showcase.
Dang it, that's the wrong one.
Isn't it D?
I think it's D. So I think that's all I have.
Perfect. Thank you for helping us showcase athletic training behind the tape. Bye.